But what we're trying to do today is obviously the impossible. We're trying to take a 6-week class, which would have pre-training before you get here, and then a week's homework between every hour. We're trying to condense that down, so it's kind of like the second class is happening now. The dogs are coming out again, but of course they haven't done a week's homework in between. I would hope now they can take what they've learnt in here, the owners, about representative observation, representative feedback, and classical conditioning, seeing the dog, pointing it out when the dog sees it, backing up and super praising that dog and whipping out your tug-of-war toy that's been amped up as a secondary. That a lot of these dogs in here now, all of them, they are ready to go on the street. The two most reactive are the boxer and the boxer cross. Okay, and I just went and rechecked bite histories, and with the boxer, of course, we don't really have a bite fight record because the dog was stopped twice on leash. There was only that one incident that we discovered this morning that actually isn't in the fight bite record of when the dogs were off leash and they met and they did some chest bumping, and there were no bites. So, it's kind of interesting. What you find is the more fights they've had, usually the more effective this type of stuff is. The dogs don't get as stressed being here. So you have another dog here who's only been attacked, and hasn't actually initiated a fight. So again, what we're missing here is this should take 6 weeks, and you have a week's homework before you start, the prior training. Teach your dog sit, teach him come for and sit, teach him to walk on a loose leash, teach him to vocalize on cue. So when you say sit, you always say sit and shush. So what happens is after about 12 repetitions, when you say sit, the dog knows it means sit and shush because you always say sit and shush. So one word now sits the dog looking at you and he's quiet. Okay, so that's the prior training before we get there. Then after each week, learning the skills, we have a week to practice on the street. And we want to and when we do that, it's a lot easier than here. So I would say, all right, for all of you, don't think your goal is to train your dog up so he can go back in the dog park again. Now, that may indeed happen, with some dogs, but no, your goal should be that you can walk your dog again, and you can walk him on a loose leash, and when you see other dogs, you back up, and he sits and looks at you, and they go by, and you praise him, the classical conditioning routine. Number 2, for some of the dogs, we'd like to get them playing again. With whom? With an inner core, a core group, I call it, of friends. Like 1, 2, 3, 4 dogs, your friends' dogs, that your dog's going to see on a regular basis. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to do all of your classical conditioning with, say, those 3 or 4 dogs. Much easier than in here. So like a great classical conditioning routine is your friends come to your house with their dogs, and they spread out, 3 of them, and they walk the block counterclockwise. You go clockwise. That means for a long time, the whole length of the block, you can't see another dog. And then it comes around the corner. And so you stop and wait for it to happen. That person knows, though, if there's any reaction, they stop. They don't close the distance. So you've got a lot of times when there's no dogs in sight, but because we have 4 sides to the block and 3 dogs, now a dog appears. If you can walk towards him, that's cool, because he's walking towards you. When they get close, I like the stimulus dog to stop. Okay, because you know these people. So they aren't closing the distance, you are closing the distance at your own space. Then you go past that dog, then the next one's coming. You do 1 lap, that's the hardest lap. You're going to do 5 laps around the block. You're going to do 15